Immigrant mother finds her son asking for alms. What happens next will thrill you. Carmen stopped abruptly in the middle of Chicago's busy sidewalk when he saw that familiar face between the beggars at the subway entrance. Please, anything helps, the 16-year-old murmured, extending a glass of plastic to the hasty passers-by. Her eyes, once bright, full of dreams, now carried the weight of those who had lost all hope. Diego, his son Diego, was there, dirty, thin, unrecognizable. Carmen Valdez, 42, had worked 18 hours a day in the last 2 years cleaning offices and washing dishes in restaurants to legally bring Diego from the United States. Every penny saved, every meal she jumped, every nightless night, everything had been for this moment of reunion, but not like that, never like that. Diego, his voice came out like a broken whisper. The boy raised his eyes slowly. When he recognized his mother's face, something died inside him. It was not joy. It was pure and devastating shame. Mom, Diego tried to hide his face, but it was too late. Carmen knelt on the cold floor, pulling her son into her arms. The tears he had held for 2 years finally began to fall. Piss. What did you do with you? Where is the Mitchell family that should be taking care of you? The mention of that name made Diego shrink even more. They sent me away. They said I was a weight. That ate too much, that his voice failed. The documents on Carmen's bag confirmed everything. The Mitchell family had signed all the necessary roles to be Diego's host family during the family reunification process. They had promised to take care of him as a son, give education, housing, love. The contract was there, with proud signatures and promises written in gold letters. They had lied about everything. How long have you been on the street? Carmen asked, holding her son's cold hands. 3 months, Diego confessed, avoiding his mother's gaze. Since I was 16, they said I was an adult enough to turn around alone. They no longer needed to take care of me. Carmen felt a cold anger up his chest. Not just anger, something much more dangerous. A determination she hasn't felt since she had crossed the border years ago, running away from the violence that plagued her hometown. The same force that had made her walk 3 days through the desert with only 1 bottle of water was waking up again. Did they get the government money? He asked, his voice gaining a tone that Diego had never heard before. Every month. To this day they receive, but I was told that it was to pay for the expenses I caused when I lived there. Diego lowered his head. Mom, I tried to work, but without documents, no fixed address. As he hugged Diego, Carmen's eyes found a gigantic outdoor across the street. Mitchell family, building futures through compassion, announced the political campaign of Robert Mitchell, candidate for mayor of Chicago. The same man who had abandoned his son on the streets now sold an image of Salvador from the community. The same man who continued to receive money from the government to take care of a child who had abandoned 3 months ago. Carmen smiled for the first time in months, but it was not a smile of joy. It was the smile of someone who had just found a much greater purpose than simple survival. It was the smile of a woman she had learned, on the dusty streets of her homeland, that justice does not always come from the courts. Sometimes it needs to be served by the very hands of those who have been harmed. There, sitting on Chicago's cold floor hugging his abandoned son, Carmen Valdez did not seem very threatening. But anyone who knows a mother's true strength knows that she grows exactly at times when everything seems lost, and that this strength has the power to overthrow whole empires when moved by the headquarters of justice. If you are enjoying this story of a mother who will not give up fighting for her child, be sure to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple immigrant is about to overthrow one of the most powerful politicians in the city, using only the truth that he fears so much. 3 days have passed since the meeting at the subway station. Carmen had rented a small room in a cheap pension where Diego took his first hot bath in months. But while his son first slept in a real bed, Carmen remained awake, studying every document he had kept religiously for years. The rolls did not lie. Robert Mitchell had received $2,800 monthly from the Federal Refugee Reception Program for 18 months. Money that should theoretically cover housing, food, education, and medical care for Diego. In total, more than $50,000 for your child's care. Mom, didn't you sleep? Diego appeared at the door, still hesitant, as if he feared that everything was just a dream. I sleep later, mijo. Tell me more about the Mitchell. Diego sat next to his mother, avoiding his direct look. They were different when the program's inspectors arrived, smiling, attentive, but when they left, the boy's voice failed. Carmen waited patiently. Donna Susan always said that I should be grateful for not being on the street, that many boys like I didn't even have that I ate too much, spoke too much Spanish, who bothered the neighbors with my accent. Carmen felt the blood boil but kept her voice calm. And Mr. Mitchell, he was almost never home. When he was, I pretended I didn't exist, until the day I turned 16. Then he said I was an adult, that the program no longer covered adults, and it was time for me to fly with my own wings. What Diego didn't know was that the federal program continued to pay for his care until he was 18. The Mitchell had lied about everything, with money that did not belong to them as they sent a child to the streets in the middle of the winter of Chicago. Carmen opened the laptop borrowed from the owner of the pension and started researching. Robert Mitchell was not just a candidate for mayor. He owned a millionaire construction company, had a charity founding that helped immigrants, and appeared in all local newspapers as an example of Christian compassion. Piss, I need you to tell me exactly what happened on the last day. Every detail. Diego took a deep breath. It was on my birthday. I woke up early. I thought maybe they were going to do something. But when I went down, Mr. Mitchell was in the kitchen with some papers. What kind of rolls? Government documents. He was talking on the phone saying that the boy had reached the age of majority and needed to update the status to continue receiving. Carmen stopped typing. Continue receiving? Yes. And when he saw me, he got nervous. It gave me $50 and told me to get my things. It was nothing personal, just business. Business. The word echoed in Carmen's mind as a death sentence. His son had been treated as a financial investment, discarded the moment he became inconvenient, but with the Mitchell continuing to profit from their existence on roll. Carmen opened the Mitchell campaign page. Robert Mitchell, building bridges, embracing diversity. The photo showed the man smiling alongside children of various ethnic groups, including some clearly Latinas. Hypocrite, he murmured. What is it, Mom? Carmen turned the screen to Diego. Do you recognize any of these children? Diego looked closely and his expression changed. This girl here, it's Sophia. She was there when I arrived but disappeared after a few weeks. Donna Susan said she had gone to a better family. And this? Carlos. He also disappeared overnight. Carmen felt a chill up his spine. It wasn't just about Diego. The Mitchell did this systematically. They welcomed refugee children, received government money, and then discarded them when it became inconvenient to keep them, but continued to receive the benefits. How many children had gone through this? How many were now on the streets of Chicago while Robert Mitchell smiled on billboards promising to take care of the community? Carmen closed the laptop slowly. For a moment, when he looked up and saw Diego watching her with that mixture of hope and fear, all who knew her story could have thought she had finally found her limit. But those who really know the strength of an immigrant mother knows that she grows exactly at times when injustice reveals her most cruel face, and that this force, fueled by the headquarters of justice, has the power to overthrow integer empires built on the exploitation of the most vulnerable. Carmen knew she couldn't face the Mitchell alone. As Diego recovered physically in the pension, she began building her support network. His first stop was the office of lawyer Maria Santos, expert on immigrant rights. Located in a modest building in the heart of the Latin community, $50,000 diverted from a federal program, Maria murmured, analyzing the documents Carmen had meticulously organized. This is not just civil fraud. It's federal crime. But there is more, Carmen interrupted, pulling a new pile of papers. I spent the last 2 weeks investigating. I found other cases. Maria lifted her eyebrows. Others? Sofia Herrera, 14. Carlos Mendoza, 15. Ana Gutierrez, 13. All passed the Mitchell house. All disappeared from the system before the age of 18. Carmen pointed to different forms. But look here, the government continued to pay for all they. The lawyer was silent for a long time, studying the documents. Carmen, do you understand that this means that Mitchell may have diverted hundreds of thousands of dollars? I understand perfectly, and I also understand that these children are on the streets of Chicago, as this man uses our pain to be elected mayor. Maria leaned forward. I need to warn, processing someone like Robert Mitchell will not be easy. He has resources, political connections, a very expensive machinery. Carmen smiled for the first time in weeks. He has money. I have something better. What? The truth, and a plan. Meanwhile, Robert Mitchell was having the best month of his political campaign. The polls showed him in the lead. His foundation had received a generous donation of $100,000 from a local businessman, and the campaign committee had approved a series of television commercials showing him as a immigrant community savior. Mr. Mitchell, his secretary knocked on the door of the luxurious office. It has a connection from the Department of Social Services, something about a routine audit of the reception programs. Mitchell did not even lift his eyes from the campaign reports. Say I'm busy, Brand next week. What Mitchell didn't know was that Carmen had spent the last 3 weeks mapping every movement of him. He knew he had lunch every day at the same exclusive restaurant. He knew his wife Susan shopped every Thursday at the most expensive mall in town. He knew he had campaign meetings every Tuesday at the Central Marriott Hotel. And most importantly, I knew he was too arrogant to imagine that a simple immigrant could represent any threat. Carmen had also discovered something interesting about investigative journalist Jennifer Walsh of Channel 7 News. Jennifer had tried to investigate irregularities in the refugee reception system 2 years earlier, but his story had been mysteriously canceled at the last minute. "Jennifer?" Carmen called the newsroom. "My name is Carmen Valdez. I believe you would be interested in knowing that reception system you wanted to investigate, well, I have all the proof you needed. How did you get my direct number? Let's say when you need to find your child on the streets, he learns to find anyone who needs it." Carmen paused. "Can I send you some documents by email? I'm sure you will recognize some names." An hour later, Jennifer called back. "Carmen, I need to see you now." While Carmen built their support network, the Mitchell lived their usual routine. Robert continued to appear at campaign events promising embracing diversity and building bridges in the community. Susan kept spending the money diverted on designer bags and expensive dinners. Neither realized that a 42-year-old woman, which they had despised just another desperate immigrant, was orchestrating something that would knock down her political career, but the whole life of privileges built on the exploitation of the most vulnerable children in the city. On Thursday night, while Diego first slept in months without nightmares on the cold streets of Chicago, Carmen finished the last details of his strategy. It would not be just justice to his son. It would be about justice to all children that Mitchell had abandoned. For a moment, looking through the window of the modest pension room, anyone could think that Carmen was just planning a common complaint. But those who know the strength of an immigrant mother who has spent years saving every penny to bring her son to a better life knows that she was building something much greater, something that would transform Robert Mitchell as a candidate for mayor into a national example of how greed can destroy integer empires about the exploitation of the most vulnerable. Monday morning started like any other for Robert Mitchell. He had coffee in his $2 million mansion when his cell phone rang. He was his campaign advisor and his voice was shaking. "Mr. Mitchell, need to turn on the television. Channel 7. Now." Jennifer Walsh appeared on the screen with a serious expression. "Good morning, Chicago. This morning we revealed an exclusive investigation into systematic fraud in the federal refugee reception program. And the protagonist of this story can shock you." Robert Mitchell's photo appeared on screen along with the headline, "Mayor candidate diverted hundreds of thousands of dollars for refugee children." Mitchell knocked down the cup of coffee. "This is impossible. During the last 18 months, continued Jennifer, Robert Mitchell and his wife Susan received more than $200,000 from the federal government to take care of refugee children. The problem? Lanks were abandoned on the streets of Chicago months ago." The camera showed Diego, clean and well-dressed, sitting next to Carmen. "My name is Diego Valdez. For 8 months I lived at Mitchell's house. On my 16th birthday they gave me $50 and sent me away, but they continued to receive money from the government, as if they were still taking care of me." Mitchell's cell phone kept playing. Advisors, lawyers, journalists, all wanting explanations, but the worst was yet to come. "And it wasn't just Diego," said Jennifer. "Our investigation discovered at least 8 other children who went through the same situation." The screen showed photos of Sofia, Carlos, Ana, and 5 other children, all under 18 years, all on the streets, all still generating monthly payments for Mitchell. Mitchell's campaign phone rang. He was the president of the local Democratic Party. "Robert, I need you to remove your application, immediately." "Wait, I can explain." "There is no explanation for this. You have 2 hours to make a pronouncement by removing your application, or we will do it." While Mitchell was trying to control the damage, Carmen was at the FBI headquarters with Maria Santos and 2 federal agents. The documents she had meticulously organized for weeks covered an entire table. "Mrs. Valdez," said Agent Thompson, "this is one of the best organized evidence I've ever seen in a case of federal fraud. How did it get all this?" Carmen smiled. "When you spend 2 years saving every penny to bring your child to a better life, he learns to be very, very careful with papers and documents." On television, Susan Mitchell left a department store carrying bags when he was surrounded by reporters. "Mrs. Mitchell, do you have any comments about the accusations? I don't know what you're talking about. We always take good care of these children." "So why was Diego Valdez found asking for alms at the subway entrance?" Susan was speechless, pushing the reporters and running to the car. At 3 in the afternoon, Robert Mitchell appeared at a makeshift press conference. He was profusely and his hands trembled as he read a hastily prepared statement. "Due to misunderstandings about the reception programs, I remove my candidacy for the City Hall of Chicago." The reporters exploded in questions. "Mr. Mitchell, is it true that they continued to receive payments for children who abandoned? How many other families have been harmed? Are you going to return the money?" Mitchell left without answering any questions. That night, Carmen and Diego had dinner in a small Mexican restaurant. For the first time in months, Diego smiled genuinely. Mom, how did you know it was going to work? Carmen took his son's hand. Piss, when you come from where we came from, learn that the powerful are powerful only while no one lights the light to show what they do in darkness. Carmen's cell phone rang. It was Jennifer Walsh. Carmen, I need to tell you, after today's story, we received calls from another 15 families reporting similar situations with other politicians in the region. Carmen closed her eyes for a moment. It wasn't just about Diego. It had never been. It was about all vulnerable children being explored by people who used compassion as a political commodity. There, in the small restaurant, watching his son smile again, Carmen realized that he had discovered something greater than just justice to his family, had discovered that a single determined mother, armed with truth and patience, had the power to overthrow integer systems of corruption built on the exploitation of the most vulnerable. 6 months later, Carmen Valdez was sitting in the front row of the FBI auditorium, observing Agent Thompson announce the results of the operation she had started. Operation False Refuge resulted in the arrest of 23 people, a recovery of $3.2 million diverse dollars, and identification of 47 children victims of the scheme. Robert Mitchell was not present. He served a sentence of 8 years in federal arrest for fraud, money laundering, and exploitation of minors. Susan Mitchell had lost the house, the luxury cars, and worked as a supermarket box to pay for his own legal debts. And today, the agent continued, we are pleased to announce that Carmen Valdez will be our new special consultant for cases involving minor refugees. Carmen got up to receive the official certificate. Diego, now 17 years old and uniformed from the private school where he studied with full scholarship, applauded proudly in the front row. After the ceremony, Jennifer Walsh approached. Carmen, I have a proposal. How about a documentary about this whole story? Only if it is to help other mothers who are going through what I went through, Carmen replied, hugging Diego. On the way out of the federal building, they went through a group of refugee children accompanied by their new host families now undergoing a rigorous verification process created on Carmen's investigative work. Mom, said Diego, Sophia sent me a message yesterday. She got a bag to study medicine. Carmen smiled. Sophia had been one of the children found living on the streets after being abandoned by Mitchell, like Carlos, Ana, and 5 other children who now had safe homes and promising futures. And Carlos? It's finishing high school and wants to study law. He says he wants to help other children like us. At that moment, Carmen realized that her story had become something much greater than personal justice, had become a movement that would protect thousands of children in the future. Do you know what prides me most? Carmen said, stopping at the entrance of the subway where he had found Diego asking for alms just 6 months earlier. It's not knocking over the Mitchell. It's knowing that no more child will go through what you have gone through. Diego looked at the place where he used to ask for alms and then to his mother. How did you have the courage to face such powerful people? Carmen laughed softly. Piss. When you are a mother, discover that there is no power in the world larger than the love you feel for your son. And when this love is fed by injustice, she paused, watching passers-by passed by. He becomes something capable of moving mountains. A year later, Carmen had become a nationally recognized speaker, his history inspiring changes in federal laws on refugee protection. Diego graduated in high school as a speaker of the class and was accepted at Harvard with full scholarship. Robert Mitchell, in turn, lost not only freedom but also the family. Susan abandoned him as soon as the goods were confiscated, and his 2 biological children refused to visit him in prison. During the long nights in the cold cell, he had all the time in the world to reflect on how his greed had destroyed not only the lives of innocent children, but his own privileged existence. The Mitchell Family Foundation has been dissolved, and all its heritage has been directed to a smaller refugee assistance fund, administered by Carmen. On the wall of the small office Carmen now kept in downtown Chicago, there was a framed photo, she and Diego the day he was accepted in Harvard. Below, a phrase she repeated to each immigrant mother who was looking for her for help. The best revenge is not to destroy who has harmed you. It is to build something bigger than they could ever imagine. 2 years after Mitchell's arrest, Carmen received a letter in prison. It was his, asking for forgiveness and recognizing the evil he had caused. She never answered, not out of evil, but because some wounds are scars that serve to remind the world that justice, when executed with intelligence and determination, does not need forgiveness, just needs results. During a national television interview, the presenter asked Carmen what his greatest pride was. She looked at Diego, who now worked half a time helping other refugee families while studying, and smiled. My greatest pride is not having knocked down a corrupt politician. It is having turned the deepest pain of my life, finding my son on the streets, the fuel that will protect thousands of other children. Robert Mitchell tried to break us, but ended up creating a force he could never control. And you? What would you do if you were in Carmen's place? Have you ever faced a situation where you had to fight for your children against powerful people? Leave your story in the comments and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove that a determined mother can move the whole world when it comes to protecting her children, and that true revenge is not just defeating her enemies, but building a legacy that makes them realize that they have completely underestimated the power of those fighting for love.